Good afternoon, everybody. I know everyone's time is valuable, so we are going to start right on time today. Welcome to the second workshop offered by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's Office of Public Participation, OPP as we call it. This is our Tips for Powerful Comments workshop. I am Elin Swanson Katz, the director of OPP, and OPP is celebrating just over 1 year of full operations. OPP's mission is to empower, promote, and support public voices at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, as we call it. This is OPP's second workshop in our series on fundamentals on FERC participation. Our first workshop in the series last August was on how to file comments in a FERC proceeding using FERC's e-file and e-comment online application, and is available on OPP's workshop. Today is a natural progression from that workshop as it focuses on how to make your comments in a FERC proceeding clear and impactful. And we are excited to have hundreds of people attending today. And we're delighted to present you with what is truly an all-star lineup of speakers with decades of experience who will provide insights on how to make your comments more powerful. We will begin with FERC Commissioner James Danley, who will share his insights and perspectives on what makes comments to FERC more impactful and persuasive. Next, there will be a panel of the top leaders in 3 key FERC offices: Terry Turbin, Director of the Office of Energy Projects; Jette Gebhart, Director of the Office of Energy Market Regulation; and Jignasa Gadani, Director of the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation. These leaders will share their perspectives on powerful comments, and at the end, there will be some summary suggestions and guidance from OPP's own team. So you're gonna be able to ask questions of all of our speakers, once at the end of Commissioner Danley's remarks, again after the office directors have completed their presentations, and time permitting, after OPP staff have made their remarks at the end of the workshop. So please enter your question in the YouTube chat. For participants using the Spanish channel, please enter your questions into the Zoom chat. OPP staff will moderate the questions offered, and we are following along here on our phones, so make sure you do in fact use the chat feature. Of course, you can also follow up with questions to OPP after the workshop or at any time by contacting us at opp@ferc.gov. And I see the contact information is also on the screen. I'll also introduce our first speaker, Commissioner James Danley. Commissioner Danley has been a FERC commissioner since March 2020, and he also served as chair from November 2020 through January 2021. Prior to his service as commissioner, he served as general counsel at FERC and also practiced energy law for a major private law firm. Commissioner Danley is also a former U.S. Army officer, served 2 tours in Iraq, receiving a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. So thank you for your service, Commissioner. And now we'll turn it over to you for your remarks.
Thank you. So when Ellen first asked me if I was interested in doing remarks for this workshop, I was thrilled at the opportunity. Since I've been general counsel at FERC, I've been trying my best to give people tips in every forum that I'm in as to how to make comments more effective and your advocacy more persuasive. And my hope is that as many people as possible will participate in FERC dockets and do so as effectively as they can. So I very much appreciate the chance to be here. So chances are, if you are watching this, you're already aware that FERC's jurisdiction covers the rates for sale of electricity and transmission, and the rates for transportation services on natural gas pipelines and the siting of natural gas pipelines and LNG. It's worth taking a moment to sort of frame how it is that FERC makes decisions in order to then understand what makes for valuable comments. So FERC is an adjudicatory body. that has to make its decisions based upon the law, that is the legal standards articulated by Congress and by the courts. And when it makes those decisions, they have to be based upon substantial evidence in the record. Those legal standards are not merely the ones that are inherent in our organic statutes. So, for example, in the Federal Power Act, the rates that are approved have to be just and reasonable. There are also the legal requirements of the Administrative Procedure Act, for example, that all of our decisions have to be based on reasoned decision-making, and that FERC is obligated to respond to all substantive arguments when it renders a decision. And it's worth understanding that the scope and size of the proceedings that FERC has going on at any given time vary drastically. We have relatively small proceedings in which, for example, a single individual tariff provision is being revised in an electric utility where the docket contains only two documents, the filing request and the dispositional order. Then there are other proceedings we have, often our rulemaking, some of which are landmark issuances that seek to shape national policy, and those can run to tens of thousands of pages with thousands of individual submissions. And so given the size and scope of some of the proceedings, it is imperative that commenters or participants in our dockets have the most effective advocacy they possibly can. So what this means for the public seeking to comment in FERC proceedings, there are a handful of tips that I'm dismayed that even after years of trying to encourage a good practice, even seasoned practitioners fail to adhere to. And it's only a handful. And if somebody follows these basic principles, they'll generally speaking do fairly well. So the first one, and this is first because it is the most important, any comment that is filed at FERC, any comment, any protest, any submission should be as absolutely brief as possible. As I said, some of our proceedings run to tens of thousands of pages, and you do yourself no favors by having unnecessary surplusage in your submissions. I have seen many, many times where a very short pleading of perhaps 3 pages is much, much, much more effective at conveying the legal and factual arguments that the commenter wants to convey to the commission when it's making its decisions than submissions that are 10 times as long. The length of the comment is not what is important. It is how direct and how persuasive the argument is that's being made. Second, and this is almost as important as being brief, and they obviously complement one another, it is necessary to be as clear as possible. And what I mean by that is any commenter who wishes to bring something to FERC's attention needs to be unambiguous and perfectly clear from the very get-go as to whether they are in favor of or in opposition to a proposed action at the commission. It should be in the very first line of the pleading. In fact, it should be before the first line. It should be in the caption and in the file name. So if you oppose something, the filing should read comments in opposition or protest. It should be absolutely clear where you stand. And this goes not just for single issue adjudications, but in larger multifaceted rulemakings, which touch on a large number of subjects. It may well be that you were for some and you were against others. In that case, my advice is that you do everything you can to break out each individual issue at stake and specify issue 1, whatever it is, we endorse it for this and that reason, right? So you give your position in support or opposition, and then explain the reasons why based on the law and the facts. Very often we get these filings in which there is a lot of unnecessary throat clearing that precedes the actual substance. That is, you get pleadings where it says, ABC Utilities stands firm with FERC in its desire to accomplish X, Y, and Z goal. And there's a whole lot of, as I say, throat clearing. And it's not until page 12 that you actually get to the point, which is, and by the way, we think what you're doing is a terrible idea. Here's a better way to do it. It would be far more effective as a tool of persuasion for the commenter to simply get to the point in the very beginning. And this brings me to my third point, which is often people go through this throat clearing in order to, I think, avoid offending the commission. And my third practice tip is don't worry about offending the commissioners. There is absolutely no need to worry about that. First of all, you're not going to. We have plenty of people who have very strong opinions about things and they express them. And that is all part of the give and take of litigation before the commission. And even if you do end up offending the commission, it doesn't matter because everybody has the privilege of participating in our dockets. And if you have a sincerely held and passionate belief on a subject and you need to drive the point home with some degree of vigor, that's your privilege. And it is I'm not counseling being openly disrespectful or rude because I wouldn't suggest that to anybody trying to persuade anybody of anything anywhere. But to the extent to which you want to make arguments forceful and passionately, I see no problem with it. And people should not be reticent to tell the commission what they really think about the proposed action that's in front of them on the docket. And then the last point that I would make goes back to my original discussion of the bases upon which the commission makes its decisions. As I said, it is based on the law and substantial evidence in the record. And if somebody wants to simply comment to FERC to express their general opinions about American energy policy, they're free to do so. You're entitled to submit whatever you like. But generalized grievances about policies are usually not what is at issue in individual adjudications. These are confined to the legal standards, as I said, that have already been articulated by Congress and the courts, and the evidence that is put forth in front of the commission. And so this goes to what the public's the public comments can often best deliver. There are an entire series of facts and concerns that are known to members of the public, but are not known to the jurisdictional entities. And so rather than expressing, let's say, general opposition to, for example, a natural gas pipeline project, or perhaps down the road, a transmission line or something like that, it would be far more effective to explain the particular issue that you would have for or against a specific project and how it specifically impacts you or the community in which you live. Those are elements that are quite amenable to consideration in the commission's determination of whether a project is in the current or future public convenience necessity, and they are not as easily obtainable from sources other than public comments. Those would be the most effective and valuable new data that could be brought to bear in a docket. And I would encourage everybody to be as specific as possible with the most specific facts that they can plead when they are submitting in FERC dockets. So that is, by necessity, a pretty brief overview. But I think if you stick with those 4 points, any practitioner's pleadings will be a great deal better. And I'm happy to take questions on that or any other aspect of FERC practice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Yeah, it is time for questions. And just once again, please put your questions into the YouTube chat or the Zoom chat if you're participating in Spanish. We are monitoring it. I'm going to start with take my prerogative and ask you a follow-up question, Commissioner. You mentioned throat clearing, and by that, the wind up. Being a lawyer, I might have been guilty of that a few times myself. But can you give us an example of an instance where public comments were particularly helpful or profound or impacted your decision making?
So I'm not going to, I thought about this. I was actually going to give examples of what I thought were good and bad pleadings, and I decided that was probably preferable not to because I want to call people out specifically. There was I'm going to speak in generalities for that purpose, but there were a handful of comments about a specific project that this was when I was actually general counsel, was before I was commissioner, that specified the consequences of the expansion of a facility, and it had a handful of different people, all of whom were in the immediate vicinity of where this Section 7 facility was going to be located, and each one of them was different from all the others, but they all had the basic same gist, which was that they were going to find the process disruptive, and with very specific examples of how. That's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. And that is not what most public comments are like. They are not that specific, and they don't have that clear connection between the project and the the opposition that's being brought to the commission's attention.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great example and very helpful, I think, to the audience. So let's turn to the audience questions. We have a question from Protect Our Water Heritage Rights, Power, and it kind of comes to the ultimate heart of the matter. How much do public comments impact FERC decisions?
So unfortunately, that is one of those questions, how long is a piece of string? Every adjudication is different, and every adjudication has different facts that are brought to bear. The public comments absolutely matter in that in the absence of them, that evidence is not in the record. And all of the evidence is weighed by the commission when it renders a decision. I feel like in the background of that question, there is a sense that many people have expressed to me over the years, and not just the public, but even utilities, even jurisdictional entities, where they wonder what happens when they send their comments or submission into the black box of FERC adjudication, and then some number of months later, an order pops out, and it's kind of difficult for us for outsiders to see what the mechanics inside the building are like. Well, that's partially driven by the fact that we're constrained by law. We're not allowed to discuss the contents of, or the merits, I should say, of any on-the-record contested proceeding. And so by legal necessity, these are adjudications that are, once in front of us, we make the decisions based upon the evidence that's publicly available. I read these records, and the staff goes through them painstakingly, and they absolutely matter. To the extent to which anybody, and I mean anyone, whether they are a jurisdictional entity or a member of the public, has a stake in or an interest in one of our proceedings, and they have the resources to do so, I encourage them to file, because their filings matter.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question, which is, this is from an audience member. How much do elected official comments affect FERC decisions? In other words, and does FERC assume that if they hear from an elected official, that reflects the people's opinions that are aligned with those public officials?
So that is a hard question to answer, because certainly from the standpoint of legality, those if they are entered into the docket, they become part of the record, and they are considered and weighed in the normal adjudicatory process like anything else. Certainly elected official comments draw notice and the attention of the commission staff, but ultimately every decision is based upon the law and the facts that are in the record. And so you don't necessarily get public officials' comments or elected officials' comments that actually adduce new evidence that in itself is going to change the outcome of an adjudication. Nevertheless, when I said I encourage everybody with an interest in our proceedings to file, I include elected officials in that. They too should file if they have an interest in their constituents do.
Thank you. Actually, I think I have one more quick question, and it's something that comes up to us an OPP all the time. Is there a role for the public to make spoken comments at a commission meeting rather than submitting written comments?
No.
Okay. And so do you continue to urge people to file written comments as the best means for providing their perspectives to FERC?
Absolutely. The other option is to come and meet with the commissioner, the staff, and request a chance to speak in person. The only problem with that is if you have a specific issue that has to deal with an on-the-record contested proceeding, the ex parte rules make that impossible. But if you want to talk about anything that is not currently on the record or contested, the commission is a more approachable place than I think people often think it is. It may seem remote and distant, but in fact, a couple of phone calls and you can usually manage to talk to the person you want to.
Thank you, Commissioner. That is absolutely true in my experience. The people are quite approachable, as are the commissioners. And I think that's all the time we have at the moment for questions for Commissioner Danley. I want to be respectful of your time. You were terrific. Thank you so much for joining us and
thank you.
Being with the public. I'm now going to pass the mic to my OPP colleagues, Kelley, Munoz, Lytle, and Amanda Bradshaw.
Thanks, Ellen. My name is Kelley Munoz, Lytle, an outreach specialist in OPP.
And my name is Amanda Bradshaw, an energy markets manager in OPP. Kelley and I have years of experience reviewing comments for various types of proceedings. We'd like to share some perspective with you all on the importance of comments before our panel of directors. First things first, why submit comments? Commenting is an important way to make your voice heard and influence FERC decisions that can impact your life and other people's lives. Comments are key sources of information that are integral to the Commission's decision-making process. FERC regulates complex industries, and the cases before it cover a broad range of issues. Because of this, the Commission employs a wide variety of skilled technical experts and specialists, such as environmental scientists, engineers, economists, analysts, and lawyers, and the list goes on. However, these specialists may not always have full knowledge about how a FERC decision or action may affect a specific industry, community, or the environment. That's where you come in. Comments in FERC proceedings add to this base of knowledge. Comments can and do improve FERC decisions. Comments help make sure that FERC understands the full perspective, or alert it when it's not, by providing factual information, local perspectives, additional considerations, and the benefits of unique expertise or experience.
FERC deals with a wide variety of proceedings and receives hundreds of filings each day related to regulations, programs, plans, studies, and reports. While Commission proceedings offer opportunities for the public to comment, they may have unique flavors and life cycles.
A lo mejor tenían diferentes
sabores,
pero está en su interés poder hacer que los comentarios estén en ciertos procedimientos que estén apropiados.
Kelley, I think you're muted.
So an example of powerful comments is one that raises unique concerns, impacts, or on-the-ground experiences that FERC may not have yet considered in its analysis. Your understanding of local conditions, such as how a proposed change to a regulation can affect electricity market conditions, or how a natural gas pipeline would affect local wildlife, is relevant information. Insights and knowledge of unique details about the area of a project, or specialized knowledge of a potential market impact or an unintended consequence of a regulation is essential information for decision makers. Related to that point, comments offer critical information. Through comments, you can share information prepared by others, such as research, published reports, and studies. In general, more accurate information leads to a better understanding of the problem and more effective outcomes. Also, comments help when they point out how a proposed project, proposal, or regulation comports or conflicts with relevant laws and regulations. Since FERC implements legislation created by Congress, decisions must be consistent and compatible with governing laws and regulations. As such, one goal of commenting is to help the agency assemble an accurate and comprehensive set of facts and perspectives. Also, we refer to this as our administrative record, and that allows the Commission to support appropriate and informed decision-making. In the absence of a sufficient administrative record, a FERC decision is at risk of being overturned by a court on the grounds that it lacked evidence to make that decision. The just and reasonable standard, as well as the scope of environmental impacts, both might have a familiar ring to some listeners. Comments often allow FERC to make key determinations based on these legal standards. And with that, I will hand it off to Rachel, who will introduce our panel of directors.
Thanks, Kelley. My name is Rachel McNamara, and I'm the Director of Outreach and Assistance at OPP. We're excited to hear from our panel of 3 directors that lead the Office of Energy Projects the Office of Energy Market Regulation, and the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation. Taken together, their staff are responsible for analyzing and processing thousands of filings per year, covering many different issues. They, with the support of their respective staff, have an important role in decision-making at FERC. Ultimately, they advise and make recommendations to the Commission as to the possible outcomes of its decisions. Each director will provide a few words, and then we will open for questions. And from now, I will turn it to Terry Turbin, the Director of the Office of Energy Projects, followed by Jette Gebhart and Jignasa Gadani. Terry?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'll just take a few minutes to talk a little bit about what OEP does. I think it helps us to set the stage for what we find to be informative comments. So the office I work in provides the Commission with recommendations regarding applications for hydroelectric or natural gas projects. We perform engineering and environmental reviews of these projects, and we issue environmental documents as required by the National Environmental Policy Act. The office is comprised of about 370 specialists covering archaeology, biology, geology, engineering, environmental protection, and recreational planners. For today, I'll focus on the parts of OEP and its duties that are involved in the public comment process, which is roughly about half the staff. About 170 folks that's their day-to-day job. The folks are involved in reviewing proposals by companies to build infrastructure, certain types of hydropower, interstate natural gas pipelines, and LNG terminals. And the bulk of the analysis that we do is described in the environmental review documents that we issue. On average, we issue about 60 to 70 individual environmental review documents each year. And through that process, we receive and review on the order of about 9,000 individual comment letters or submittals each year. And every one of those gets read, and every one is used to inform or focus or direct the analysis that we undertake. Our analysis is then provided to the Commission to inform its decision, as Commissioner Danley spoke to, about whether or not the project is in the public interest or whether or not and under what conditions the Commission would authorize a project. As I said, there's a breadth of knowledge within OEP, but what we can't replicate in-house is just the types of things that Kelley spoke to. It's the local knowledge. Our job is to assess these projects that might be proposed anywhere in the country so we can maintain expertise on things like endangered species, wetland mitigation, safety analysis. It's just not possible for us to replicate the local knowledge. So that's where the comments really help to focus our analysis. And so the overarching advice I'd give on what makes an informative comment is something that gets to the issue quickly, provides details, but also provides that geographic specificity. What we find a lot of times is, as Commissioner Danley said, folks put a lot of text that they really don't need to. It's really get to the point quickly. We're going to take it from there to look at the issue that was raised. And the timing of the comment, I think, is something that the commenters ought to consider too. The question came up for Commissioner Danley as to how it influences the process. Comments do influence the final decision, but early comments often influence the development of the project. And I think that's an important point for folks to consider, that commenting early might help influence how the project develops by the project sponsor and can sometimes address issues better. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jette for her thoughts.
Thanks, Terry. So I'm Jette Gebhart, the Director of the Office of Energy Market Regulation at FERC. Like Terry, I wanted to give a little bit of background about my office and what we do, because it also influences what kind of comments are helpful and how we use comments. So OEMR, my office, we have about 200 people and we are responsible for leading the analysis of electric and natural gas rate and tariff filings submitted to the Commission. That means we're the lead office for advising the Commission on filings made by utilities to change the rates they charge for electric energy sales and transmission and for the transportation of natural gas. So we're very much about the rates that are charged. And these are in wholesale markets. These do not directly necessarily, they're not directly what you see the public sees in their bills, but we're focused on the wholesale rates, and this also involves market rules and regulations. So where energy is sold in an organized market, the rules for that market are also evaluated through my office. So we also oversee other types of filings that come into the commission, including, for example, proposed public utility mergers and acquisitions. I think it's important, and several people spoke to the scope of what FERC processes. My office, OEMR, receives thousands of filings per year to be processed by the staff here, teaming up with other offices like the General Counsel's office. And many of the filings that we process, actually most of them come on deadlines that are established by the statute. So for example, most electric rate filings, including market rule filings, are required to be acted on by the commission within 60 days. Many natural gas rate filings must be acted on within 30 days. So I think that sets the context for what is very important and most helpful in filings, and I'm just going to echo, I think, what Commissioner Danley and Terry said, is that filings that are direct, clear, and specific are what is most helpful. I think it's important, too, to understand that when OEMR and the Commission is reacting to a filing by a utility, we are constrained, we are reactive. We are reacting to the filing that comes before us. Unlike in larger proceedings like rulemakings, we're not allowed to transform, the commission is not allowed to transform what the utility proposes to us. So the more specific you can be about the impact of that specific filing on your interests, whether positive or negative, the more helpful it is to us. As Commissioner Danley said, more generalized comments are often not necessarily related to the specific filing that we are evaluating. And then lastly, to echo what Terry said, the timeliness of comments is very important, especially when we're acting on tighter timeframes. So if there's a 60-day action point, comments that come in on the 50th or 55th day, while we look at all comments, we just have less time. So if you can file by the comment deadline, which in electric rate cases is usually 21 days after filing, that is most helpful to us. And I will go ahead and end there and look forward to taking comments. And apologies, I'll turn it over to Jignasa Gadani from the Policy Office.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jette. This is Jignasa Gadani. I'm the Director of the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation. I appreciate the opportunity to provide my perspective on what effective comments look like. So just like the other two directors, briefly, the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation monitors emerging issues in the electric and natural gas industries, and our observation of those puts us in a position to work with the other offices to recommend to the Commission whether they need to pursue reforms or whether they need to research other issues. The types of work we do that the public tends to pay attention to we issue public reports. For example, we do a State of the Markets report once a year, which is put out publicly that informs the public of what has happened the last year that's worth paying attention to. The other major effort we work on is rulemakings. These are efforts, generic proceedings that are subject to notice and public comment, which means when we want to pursue a reform, we will publish a notice of proposed rulemaking that is open for public comment. And after receiving the public comment, that record is used to inform the Commission on what action to take so that a reform is finalized. This is why, as other speakers have indicated, public comments are important. Timely public comments are very, very valuable. We look forward to getting comments from as broad of a group as possible in order to enable the Commission to take action. One item that I'd like to point out that's different than other proceedings is in a rulemaking, we are able to talk to the public. We can conduct outreach, which is different than the pending proceedings that Jette mentioned, for example. So we are able to talk to people, conduct meetings, conduct outreach. But at the end of the day, what we need is a complete record that the commission uses to make a final decision. One other thing, when we issue a notice of proposed rulemaking, we publish a deadline by when public comments are due. Those are tied to the Federal Register publication of that notice of proposed rulemaking. It's very important to provide comments by that due date. I will now repeat a lot of things that others have said, but when responding to a proposed rule, examining the reform that the commission is putting forward and indicating whether you support or object to that reform is very valuable. I think that's one of the first things that's helpful, is to say, we support this, we object to it. If you would like a modification, then explain what your modification would be. And the modification would be based on your experience, your knowledge, your interest in that matter. Being clear, concise is always helpful. Like the other offices, we have a limited number of staff that read everything that come in response to a rulemaking. So to the extent the comments are clear and focused, that helps us make sure that we are taking account of each one of them and being responsive.
Ay, no. ¿Estás escuchando en español? Sí. Ah, es que se cayó. ¿Quién se cayó?
Apologies, I think I lost sound, but I'll continue. With that, some additional suggestions is it's always helpful to provide the commission with concrete ideas about what you think should be done. Your experience of how a proposed reform will work is also helpful. Providing real-world examples, factual reasons for the positions you're taking, concrete evidence, quantification or estimation of the costs or harms or benefits is always very helpful. Sometimes commenters will put in studies that support their positions. That is fine. But if you have publicly available information and want to reference that, that is also very valuable. It's another aspect that we often get asked is, should we collaborate? Should we file group comments? We encourage everyone, if you have a strong interest, to file comments. If you want to collaborate with others to submit comments and show consensus, that is also fine. Again, anyone can file comments that on these proceedings, because we do want to hear from everyone, and we want those comments in the record to be able to make a decision on the facts of the law, as Commissioner Danley indicated. With that, I will pass it back to Rachel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Terry and Jette and Jignasa. I really appreciate your insight. We have some time to take questions, and we have seen a number come in, so I hope you all are ready. The first question I have, I think I will direct to Jette first, and then maybe to Terry, because it's talking about interveners. And I know in rulemakings we don't have interveners. How does the commission distinguish between a public comment and those of parties to a case? Is there a difference? And I'll start with Terry.
Thanks very much. I think the difference really is in the legal standing of the person and the party. I think the weight of the comment is considered equally, whether it's just from this has been my experience, whether it's just from the general public or it's from someone who's a party to the proceeding. The commission looks at all of the comments that come in, and I think gives them equal weight. It's really just intervention provides you the ability to seek further judicial review of commission actions, not necessarily have a stronger voice in providing a comment.
Thanks, Terry. Jette, did you have any follow-up for that?
No, Terry covered it perfectly.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Jette, I may have you answer the next one from a markets perspective. And Terry, this is probably one for you as well. But when we have information filed by applicants and the response doesn't, at least from the public perspective, feel adequate, should the public comment to that effect? Is that one you can take, Jette?
Yeah, well, could you repeat the question, because I'm not sure whose response may be inadequate.
Sure. If an applicant or somebody filing an application before FERC, if the public feels that their response is inadequate, should the public comment to that effect?
I think so. I mean, I think generally, if there's a filing that comes before the commission that the public, any member of the public has a concern with how it would impact them, or they believe that the filer didn't fully explain the proposal, didn't adequately explain the proposal or justify the proposal, because it is the utility's burden to justify their market proposals or rate proposals, then a perfectly helpful comment is the utility didn't explain this and didn't justify it, and pointing out where those gaps may be. So certainly you can comment directly on how something impacts you, or if you feel like the utility hasn't fully explained themselves, that's also a perfectly valid comment and helpful.
And Terry, I know you may be able to speak to this on the project side. Is there?
Yeah, I'd agree with what Jette said. I'd add that going back to the same themes we've all hit, what Commissioner Dalen said, specificity is key. It's not that useful to comment to say, I feel that the response was insufficient. What's really helpful is to dive into the whys you feel it's insufficient and try to help us assess what it is. As I said, we have lots of expertise within the agency, but we're certainly not experts on everything under the sun. And so the more specificity that can be provided, the better the end result will be.
Thanks, Terry. So the next question we have touches on something that I know Jignasa said, and this is from Kenji in the YouTube chat. His comments is, are comments made individually versus as a group or coalition viewed differently or given different weight? And Jignasa, since you started answering that earlier, I'll let you take that one first.
Yes, thanks, Rachel. So everyone should file a comment on their matter of interest. When comments come in, if there are comments filed as a group and there is more consensus, that is taken a look at, but that is not getting higher weight than other comments. All comments are important in the proceeding. But I think to the extent some comments I've seen that have been effective is when they have collaborated and honed in on specific things that are actionable and setting that in the record for the commission, that does inform the commission on where they would want to take action on. But again, all comments are important and would encourage everyone to submit comments on items that they're interested in.
Thanks, Jignasa. I'm going to direct a related question to Terry. This is about form letter comments. How do you treat, or what do you think of form letter comments?
So I think by the definition, form letters, right? We get lots of those, but by the definition, it does trend towards that uninformative piece. I mean, when you're looking for specificity and details on the issues and sort of what sorts of, how can the commission direct its analysis, lots of form letters that repeat the exact same thing don't really add to that body of knowledge. But they are still all looked at, and at least from the environmental perspective, that's what I'm speaking for. They are, we do record them, but again, if they're not offering new information, they don't provide as much value for moving the process forward on the environmental review as the detailed comment.
Thanks, Terry. I think the next one I will send to Jignasa and maybe Jette. Some comments on rulemakings come in literally at the very last minute or the last day. Is there an advantage to submitting comments earlier in the process? Jignasa, if you want to take that first, that'd be great.
Sure. The commission has established deadlines, and so all comments within that deadline period are reviewed in order to provide recommendations to the commission. So that's what we encourage. Comments that come in earlier get read earlier. However, that doesn't mean that all comments won't get read. As long as they're within the deadline, they are read because they're part of the record, and we're using that record to recommend action to the commission.
Thanks. The next question, I think, Terry, I'll direct to you, and I think I'm going to paraphrase a little. This is about the commission's responsibility to tribal trust responsibility. And so how does the commission consider the comments of tribes when incorporating those into the decision-making process?
So tribes, with the government-to-government consultation that the commission undertakes, I mean, tribes do have a very large voice, I think, in the process that the commission uses. I think the same tenets apply to comments from those entities in terms of being specific, commenting early. But I do think that they are given extra weight because they're coming from entities that the U.S. government has recognized as sovereign entities with special expertise regarding the cultural resources and their areas that may be affected by the project.
Terry. Next question, Jette, I'm going to send to you. What obligation does an intervener have to respond to a comment offered by a member of the public?
That's a good question. In the proceedings that my office leads the analysis of, there actually is not a reply to, or there's not a provision in our regulations for replies to replies. So utility will make a proposal, and there's a comment period that's 21 days, and that's all our regulations provide for. Now, many utilities submit motions for leave, for permission to answer, and therefore answer public comments or other comments. And we often accept those because the back and forth, it can help the commission's decision making, but there's no obligation on behalf of the utility to respond to comments. In the proceedings that I process.
And Terry, is there any difference on project side proceedings?
No, I think Jette's got it covered.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I'm looking for more questions. I'm not seeing, not seeing any in my inbox. Oh, here's one. Is there assistance, and I will ask this of you all, and this may be a question that we talk about as OPP panelists later. But is there assistance that you can provide to commenters in proceedings in your offices? I'll start Jignasa and then go down the line to see kind of what help could be provided to a commenter.
This is where I think one of the things we look forward to doing is continuing to work with the Office of Public Participation to help individual commenters that are not used to commenting in FERC proceedings to submit comments. As I mentioned earlier, to the extent we are getting information about a reform or have a proceeding, we are able to talk to people if they want to talk through what the proposed rule is planning on doing. and to the extent it affects their interest. However, we have a certain number of staff. Staff are often working on other matters, so we have to prioritize which items we can work on. But to the extent, we also put out press releases and fact sheets, as well as a contact name on rulemakings. So those are other venues that people can seek assistance in addition to asking for OPP's help.
Thanks, Jignasa. Jette or Terry, did you want to add anything to Jignasa's answer?
I'll just add, at least for rate proceedings and market rule proceedings, Commissioner Danley mentioned the ex parte rules. And so once a filing comes before the commission on that may be contested, then we are not allowed to speak with anyone off the record on those proceedings.
Thanks. That's important.
Yeah, and OEP has similar, we're all bound by the same restrictions. I'd add, I do think we have assistance through multiple means of providing comments. I mean, the commission accepts comments electronically through the interfaces, and they can be submitted at any time. OEP is often, for each project, for larger projects especially, going into the field and holding scoping sessions. Staff is there. They're there to receive comments as well as to answer questions about the process. So while that can always be improved, and we look forward to working with OPP on methods to improve that, I think those are some of the ways we already do and can provide assistance to commenters.
Great. Thanks so much, Terry and Jette and Jignasa. I think we are about out of time, and I'm going to send the presentation back to Kelley and Amanda, but thank you again for participating with us today.
Thanks, Rachel. When participating in a proceeding, it is helpful to be familiar with the general process that the proceeding will follow and to understand the opportunities for public input within that general process. Proceedings typically have these different stages. First, a document is filed at the commission. This starts the life cycle of the proceeding. For policy and rulemaking proceedings, the commission is the one to initiate the proceeding. The document is then filed, is noticed publicly, which is a key point in which the public can start submitting comments. In the public notice, there are timelines that determine the start and end dates of a comment period, which can vary, as you heard from our directors. During this process, FERC staff continues its analysis of the proceeding and factoring in the comments filed to help inform its decisions. And in my years of experience as an environmental staff member, I've had the honor of meeting with thousands of landowners at public scoping meetings and meetings in their backyards, walking the planned rights of ways, meeting with tribal members, listening to very personal stories where people like you are sharing their concerns of what a pipeline or LNG facility in their backyard or in their community would mean to them. My colleagues that review policy proceedings and electricity rate filings, they've all had similar experiences and respect your right to comment, and we want your input. So while the work of staff is often not available to the public eye, public comments have a significant role in staff analyses and decision-making by setting in motion various processes at FERC. For example, when a comment identifies a gap in information that may be useful to decision makers, FERC staff would issue an information request to obtain the necessary information and then make that part of its analysis. If a comment raises a unique, novel, or critical issue relevant to the proceeding, the commission may make the call to take a closer look by hosting a techno conference to gather more robust information on the issue at hand and to hear from members of the public. In fact, many of the technical conferences this past year on transmission, planning, and build-out were prompted by the abundance of comments that FERC received on individual proceedings. So in short, comments frequently spark further initiatives by FERC staff to take a closer look and to gather even more information in order to do the work. So our top 5 tips for powerful comments is what you've been waiting to hear about. One of the many questions regarding filing comments that we have received countless times: how do I write an effective comment? We hope to help you organize your thoughts and craft a comment that's helping FERC staff to understand your objective and to help you, landowner, community member, stakeholders, file a comment that is clear and concise, but that also makes you feel like your voice is heard too. FERC staff, we read each and every comment. It's not going into the dark abyss of e-library, I assure you. But in fact, we read all of them. So make it count. Grab their attention. Let's get started. Okay, tip 1, organize yourself. We understand this can be a very emotional time for you, but it's important to review the filings or issuances that you want to comment on. FERC matters, we understand they're complex, there's details, so review carefully and identify comment period deadlines and make your filings on time. Ensure comments reference the correct proceeding. It's the most basic step, but it's overlooked countless times. You would be surprised how many filings receive the wrong docket. This is your time to prepare. Take your time, organize your thoughts, think about your objective. What is the end goal? If you require help with understanding the proceeding or identifying the comment period deadline, please call, email OPP. It's part of our mission. It's why we exist, and we're here to help you engage and be part of our process.
Tip 2, state your objective quickly. And I hope this tip rings true with what was previously said by Commissioner Danley and all of our office directors. This is a tip that I cannot stress enough. Get to the point early. FERC staff read hundreds of comments at times for a given proceeding. That's not to say that we discourage lengthy letters that sometimes provide historical information or scientific data, but the reason for why you are choosing to take time out of your day to comment needs to be placed upfront immediately to grab your reader. Often the objective is buried or at the very end in closing. Make your point easily available. Let's take a look at this example. The comment on the left-hand side is very broad, and it also might have in some ways passed through one of our offices, such as the Office of Energy Market Regulation or the Policy Office. This comment on the left-hand side is very broad. As a FERC analyst reading this comment, I can tell that the writer of the comment is upset and disagrees with something, but I would not be able to grasp what exactly the utility has done wrong and what FERC has anything to do with the matter in the first place. However, on the right-hand side, the objective is clearly stated up front. In this case, as a topic sentence that clearly identifies what the writer is taking issue with. The comment further goes on to provide specific knowledge about a situation involving the utility that might be inconsistent with Commission regulations. As a FERC analyst, the writer of this comment has provided me much more to work with.
Tip 3, support your points. Focus on achieving your objective in the proceeding, understanding the scope of the proceeding, and present an argument and include relevant facts or data if available. And while we know our commissioners have thick skin, tone matters. It's fine to raise you think that FERC has been giving insufficient attention to an issue, but remember, it is hard to insult someone and persuade them at the same time. Tip 4, be specific about impacts. Effective comments are supported by factual information, sound reasoning, and include specific examples of how you or your organization would be impacted negatively or positively. Your comment can be the most effective to FERC staff if you offer justification supporting your comments. You may want to provide scientific data, charts, graphs, anything that supports your comments. In the case where you are recommending an alternative course of action, I can tell you this matters. Be specific about the alternative. Show pictures or maps, and give as much information as you can to support your recommendations. One way to organize your comments would be to separate comments by topic. For example, start with localized impacts on you or your community before moving to broader environmental concerns. We appreciate and rely on your local perspective. Make your comments personal and be specific to the relevant analysis.
Tip 5, and I think this really hits on what Commissioner Danley said before, try connecting your comments to issues, factors, or impacts that are within FERC's control or authority. You may have a great suggestion for alternative locations or routes for gas or electric equipment in your neighborhood, but if the particular equipment is regulated by the state commission instead of FERC, you may need to redirect your thoughts to a state agency. Understanding FERC's role and control over energy issues will help you support your claims. Put another way, FERC has broad authority set by Congress, as Commissioner Danley mentioned, through acts like the Federal Power Act and the Natural Gas Act, but its authority has limits. It shares power with other federal agencies, state agencies, tribes, and other entities. So unfortunately, even if comments raise excellent points and ideas, FERC will not be able to take them into account if they are outside of the scope of the proceeding, either because the idea is not within FERC's purview or because of the limited specific issues at hand. Effective comments must stay within the scope of the proceeding and focus on issues that FERC can and must regulate. Thus, it is to your benefit to try to understand what FERC has to follow depending on the type of proceeding. To give our office one more plug, the Office of Public Participation can help with identifying the relevant regulations pertaining to a particular case. And to recap, here's one last peek at our top 5 tips for powerful comments. In closing, the Office of Public Participation is committed to continuing the mission to encourage and facilitate public participation in all of FERC's dealings. Also, if you've enjoyed this content, please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And now I'll hand it back to Rachel, who will take final questions regarding today's presentation.
Thanks, Amanda. First, I want to just thank everybody for your time today and just remind you that after this session, the slides from today will be posted on ferc.gov/OPP, so they will be available for you. And now I'll take a few questions from the audience. These two are related, and hopefully, Amanda, you and Kelley will be able to help kind of sort out the difference. So the first comment comes from YouTube, and it is that it was mentioned that comments that don't provide new information don't carry as much weight as other comments. And why wouldn't multiple stakeholders commenting on a shared issue increase its importance? And before you answer, I'm going to read the related question that comes from kind of the other perspective. And one commenter in the Zoom chat said, I was surprised that the first speaker said to register comments in support or opposition to a project because they had heard that NEPA comments are not votes, but the advice to register your support or opposition seemed counter to that. So I think you could probably take those two together. And Amanda, do you think you can take that one for us?
Sure, Rachel, could you repeat those first two parts? Because I'm hearing 3 parts right now. So if you could say the first 2, that would be excellent.
The first 2. Sure. That when multiple stakeholders comment on a shared issue, would that increase its importance? And then the contrasting question is, I've heard that NEPA comments are not votes, but the advice to register your support or opposition to a proposal seems counter to that. So I think both of these are getting at the idea that there are comments of different, that when we receive, how do we treat comments that come in that are similar, and are we counting them as votes or are we not counting them as votes? How are we treating repeat concerns?
Yeah, thanks for that. That's helpful. So we do not treat comments as votes. And I think that this rings true with what the previous commissioner and office director said. It's not about the number, but the content of what a comment says. So if a comment really is actually very brief, let's say maybe a page, but it really just puts up front and center what the concern is and hits on those main objectives very quickly and concisely, I think a comment like that is much more valuable in staff who are analyzing these filings than just coming at it from kind of a votes perspective. So we really care about that information you're bringing to us, providing with us to do our job better, which is, I think, much more about content than seeing it from a voting perspective again. And I think that also relates to something Jignasa said earlier, is that people can comment together. You can form a coalition or find other people who are like-minded and may want to comment together and gather around a particular issue. I think that's a great strategy that many people use to comment. You can show consensus by doing that. You can also pull together resources as a kind of strategy for commenting. But at the end of the day, analysts are reading all of these comments, and so they're giving equal weight to everything that they read. So we're not just because 10 different groups commented or got together and commented does not mean that provides more weight just by the sheer number of groups or people who got together for that. I think that maybe Kelley, so I come from the electricity markets world, so maybe Kelley can speak a little bit more from maybe the projects and natural gas pipeline world, especially in regards to that last NEPA comment.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I think there are a lot of similarities and parallels to NEPA as during the analysis for the pipelines. And I would just go back to, it is about the content, and I wouldn't diminish the one person that might be impacted versus the 20 in the community. But if anything, I feel like environmental staff are looking for that local perspective. They really appreciate the boots on the ground. We're reviewing and analyzing reports and a lot of scientific data, but that local perspective, I would say, is pretty key to help add context to the analysis.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelley. I have one last question, I think, that we'll ask for today. And that is, if you're commenting in a proceeding, it can be difficult to know exactly where you are in the process or when is the appropriate time to comment. How can an individual keep track of a proceeding and when decisions are being made?
Yeah,
Kelley,
I can go ahead.
Or Amanda, go ahead.
Sorry, Kelley, for butting in. I can take a go at that. So a common way a lot of people do this is through e-subscription. So you can e-subscribe if you already know the docket number, and that will provide you with those updates that typically go to your own personal inbox of what's going on with that proceeding. So if somebody filed a comment, for example, on your proceeding, you'll get that notice. If there's some decision that was made regarding that proceeding, you'll also get that little notification. So I think that's a wonderful way to stay in the know about a particular proceeding that you care about. You could also manually go into our e-library system, type in that docket number, and look for that updated information. That's one really manual way to do it again. But e-subscribe, I think, makes it easy. And if you need help finding e-subscription on our website, our office is there to help. We can walk you through the process.
Right. And I'd just like to remind everyone that if you're confused about the process, please call or email OPP and we will help you out. We can help you find the docket. We can help you find where you are in the proceeding. We can help describe where in the process the project stands. So let us know if you have any questions. Before we close, Kelley or Amanda, any last words? All right. Well, again, as Amanda mentioned earlier, if you've enjoyed this content, please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at the next OPP workshop. Thanks.